These are unique and challenging times. And in the midst of these sorts of days that we're living in, it's an opportunity for us. And so here we are having a very unique opportunity to have chapel in the classroom or via video for you to engage with us in what spiritual formation is like here on the campus. This semester, we're going to be talking together and hearing stories. And so what we really wanted to do during this time was to begin this experiment that we're doing together by chatting with one another about our own stories. Our theme for the semester is cruciform living. What does it mean to live your life in the shape of the cross? Now, we understand that not everybody who's participating in this is somebody who follows after Jesus, but we want to invite you that this can also be for you a time to figure out what it means for you to live the good life, the best life you can. And of course, we believe that means following Jesus, but there's space for you in this too. So as we begin this adventure together, journeying together through these unique and challenging times, we are excited for you to grow, for us to learn together, and for this community to be shaped in really powerful ways. So today, Dustin, where do you want to start?
I want to start with one of my favorite stories that I hear as your family gathers together at Thanksgivings and Christmases, your 4-year-old self. You remember back to your 4-year-old
yes.
self, and that you were kind of a little criminal, really. Who would have known? But there's this story that's told where, as 4 years old, somehow you hatched this plan where you stole nickels from your dad's drawer, buffalo nickels, so valuable nickels, climb out of the window well to head across not just the street, but a busy highway to go into a little market so that you could buy candy cigarettes, and made it back home, and of course got caught by your parents. But this is a funny story that we tell. In fact, this is a story, there are many stories in Liv's early life, her toddler years, her early childhood years, of you doing really bad things. So much concern was on your parents' part that they were praying for you that somehow God would intersect your life. So the place that I want to start is, if that was your early years and then you end up coming here as a freshman as a religion major to be a pastor, what happened? Was there a moment in there that changed your life?
I wouldn't say that there was one moment. There was a lot of kind of criminal activity when I was small, not just candy cigarettes, but like a Hello Kitty journal and gum from the grocery store and lunches from the Christian school where we just ate, my little brother and I just ate the desserts out of everybody's lunches and carefully tucked them back into their cubbies and then went on back home. And so there were a lot of those moments, but I would say that the sort of grace moments in my life, there were just a lot of those. I don't have a particular memory of kneeling down at an altar for the very first time and accepting Jesus. Of course, I did those sorts of things throughout my life, but there wasn't just one moment for me where it was like God got full attention of my life and it was there that there was a turning point. It was gradual. It's been a journey with commitments and moments along the way. But just a very kind of different story maybe than some people have. And now that I do, work in the prison, I think that my parents prefer that that's how I go into the prison instead of what they thought maybe my future would hold when I was small.
Right.
So for me, of course, not one specific moment, but I know that for you in your life, right, there have been some very distinctive, specific moments where you've had to deal with some things that are going on. You've encountered difficulties in particular that have helped to shape your life. So talk a little bit about some of those difficult moments.
Yeah, I have a distinct memory of giving my life to Christ when I was young. And in fact, it was at a church service, and it's like a Wednesday night. Our church was hosting a revival, and I remember listening to the pastor, and my heart starts beating, and I just knew as the altar call was made that I needed to commit my life to Christ. Even at like such a young age, I just felt like this distinct moment, this profound moment. And the thing that happened was I was so shy as a kid and so insecure that the thing that was prohibitive for me was that I was afraid to get up and walk down to in front of all the adults, the front of the church. And so I actually didn't go down there. And I went home that night just like really disappointed in myself and devastated. And I thought I missed my moment. I'd missed it. And I wasn't actually sure that that was ever going to happen again, that I would feel that presence of the Spirit in my heart and all this stuff. And the next day, or the next night, we had revival again, and I just had made a commitment that I was going to say yes if Jesus was calling me again. And sure enough, the altar call was made, and I felt similarly as I did the night before, and I went down and I prayed. And from that moment on, I was deeply committed to learning to be like Jesus, to read my Bible, to pray, to be at church. I loved it. It just fit my personality. I loved everything about it. But I carry another memory of a moment with me where my father sat my brother and sister down in a situation a bit like this. It was our living room, but my brother and sister were on the couch together, and my dad was in front of us, and he told us that he was going to divorce my mom, and that was devastating, of course. I was a 12th grader at that point, and when trauma happens in people, we don't always react the same. And so even in my own family, my brother and sister have carried the same memory with them, that same experience, but we each have walked our own path as a result of that. And for me, I never once had this moment where I was like, why God? I never questioned God. That just never entered it wasn't that I was afraid to do that. I just didn't feel compelled to do that. I had support. I had my youth minister who was there with me. I had the youth group, some discipleship partners that were journeying with me. And there was something about the way that my faith had been formed in me that wasn't the problem. And so it actually compelled me to go deeper. So when I came to NNU as a freshman, I was a pre-med major, but in the midst of processing all of this trauma that was going on in my family's life, I really began to sense a call to ministry. And NNU provided this place for me to heal from that trauma, right? But there wasn't like a specific moment where I was like, oh yes, now everything's good. But I did take a class here from Dr. Laird, a great professor that has since gone on to heaven, but he taught a spiritual formation class that in the midst of that class, somewhere along the way, I realized I needed to forgive my dad. That part of my healing process was me forgiving somebody that had hurt me so badly. And once I did that, there was this amazing experience for me of, I can't remember the day that it happened. I can't remember if Doc Laird said something specific or if it was the book. I just know it happened in relationship to that class. Somewhere journeying in the midst of that class that semester, God spoke to me and I realized, oh, this is part of my healing process. And so I've been appreciative of how NNU has been this place that has allowed me space to reflect and grow. And even though my faith was never shaken by this trauma, this place provided a place of healing for me. So for you came to NNU as well. What did NNU provide for you?
Well, of course, our family lives were very different, right? So I had a long history. My grandfather got a preaching certificate here. My parents met here as students, and so it was just kind of the natural place to come. This is where the people in my family come to go to college. And the unique thing for me was I had sensed this call to ministry, as you know, and I had never heard a woman preach when I felt God say to me, I want you to be a preacher. And so that was a really shocking and strange revelation in my life. And I talked to my dad, who was a pastor, about it. And of course, that's what the Church of the Nazarene has always stood for, is that women are equally called and equipped and provided with opportunities to preach the good news, that's part of what it means to be this new creation people, right? And so even though that was the sort of support I got at home, I still was really nervous to come here as a religion major. And I wanted to be faithful to God, right? I sensed distinctly that this was what God wanted me to do, and it was scary and uncertain. And I thought, a lot of the dreams that I have for my life are probably, I didn't know I was going to get upset, probably going to kind of go by the wayside.
Yeah.
But I want to be true to what God is calling me to. And so one of those things, which is kind of funny, is I thought there's never going to be a guy that's going to want to marry a female pastor. Like, that's weird. It's out of place. Like, no way. So, all right, Lord, I'll live my cross-shaped life for you and be single, which there's nothing wrong with being single, but that was what I had envisioned for my life, was this idea of marriage and a family. But I was willing to sacrifice all of that to be faithful to what God called me to be. And of course, so I found in classes so much support and so many opportunities and the education that I needed. And of course, you switched your major, right? And not pre-med anymore. So my freshman year, you're in all the freshman level classes, and I thought you were pretty cute. And so that sort of desire of my heart for a partner in my life was realized as I also was being equipped for ministry. And I think that's the beautiful thing about NNU. I don't want anybody to hear me say, like, the hope for you is you're going to get married as you come here as a student. You might, and you might not. And there is deep value and purpose in a married relationship as there is in a single relationship. And I think that's one of the things that NNU does provide, is that it might be like what happened for us, right? This community that we have as a married couple in ministry.
Is there something that you would want to say to your 18 to 22-year-old self if you could? Is there something that you would really want to make sure, avoid this or do this?
Mm-hmm. Listen for God's voice. And if you don't know how to do that, I think there are people all around that will be willing to help you. We're here for you. Your professors are here for you. Friends on campus are here for you. What does it mean? And it's different for all of us. And I think that's sort of the beauty of our stories, is there are some things that definitely are similar, but then there are some things that are so very different. Yeah. And it's not just like one moment in my life or one moment in your life, but all of these moments along the way and all of the stuff in between. So learning to hear God's voice, learning to say yes to God, whether that's to take a baby step, right? Or to make a big decision like it was for me to say, okay, God, I will sacrifice everything because I want to be true to what you have for me. I know that's best. And so I think this semester, as we're engaged in all of this, that the important thing is listen to the stories, hear the way that God intersects differently in our lives. Recognize that you don't have to look like everybody else to be somebody that lives a cross-shaped life in the world, that there are particular gifts and talents that we each have. There are particular opportunities and strengths that we each have. And God wants to use all of those to bring about the goodness and the mercy and the grace and the justice in this world. And so really lean in, right? And rely on all the people around you to help you. I think that's probably what I needed to hear, and probably what I did hear, but looking back, wish I would have listened maybe a little better.
Yeah. Our reminiscing today makes me think about our passages that we've been studying this semester from the book of Philippians. And particularly, I'm reminded of chapter 3, where Paul writes, starting in verse 10, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the sharing of his sufferings by becoming like him in his death, if somehow I may attain the resurrection from the dead. Not that I have already obtained this or have already reached the goal, but I press on to make it my own, because Christ Jesus has made me his own. I think those are such beautiful words that remind us that we're each called into this story. And I hope that today, as you've reflected with us and heard a bit of our story and how Jesus has intersected our lives, that it's maybe made you think about your own life and has provided something encouraging for you. So thanks for joining us in these interesting times that we're doing chapel. Thanks for joining us today. God bless you.